Hi everyone, I would like to share with you a few tips for passing a AI 102, which is designing and implementing Azure AI solutions that gives you a AI engineer certification. So let's start. Certification website and a study guide are great sources to start. So you can see here in Microsoft Learn, you can go to this link and start the learning process. The training is really well designed, very easy to understand. A lot of information, so you have to plan your time accordingly. And here is a bunch of information about the certification and exam, what is in the scope, and so on and so forth. That's a great place to start. If you want to have an overview of Azure services, specifically for AI, I like using this Azure charts. This is a quite nice visual way to see what kind of services are available in Azure AI. All right, a few facts. There is a new policy called Open Book Policy, which allows you to consume Azure Learn documentation resources while having an exam. This is very good, but it comes with a few quirks. First of all, at least for my exam environment, the space didn't work. So I figured out that when I press Shift space, then it actually works. I'm not sure if it was just my environment, but in case in the search box space doesn't work for you, try it with Shift. The search is hit or miss. If you specify your query well, for example, if you have a question around some specific REST API endpoint or a name of a method in Python or in C#, then it's good to search for it. Otherwise, just go and find a right service and see what you can do. The exam duration is 120 minutes, whereas 20 is for a survey. I did the whole exam with half an hour to spare, so it's not that bad, but I'm familiar with those concepts, so it's hard to say whether time would be a concern, but it's something to keep in mind. My number of questions was 49, so it definitely is within the 40-60 range. The exam does not contain any labs, and that was true for me as well. What I had and what I've heard from other people that passed the exam is a scenario-based set of questions at the very start. You cannot skip those questions, so that might be an issue because there's quite a lot of reading and thinking, but also just, I believe, 6 questions. So nothing really that bad. The exam passing score is 700 points. Minimum, well, that's again depending on if you prepare well, it's not that difficult. There's quite a few free exam preparation resources that I could recommend. So first of all, what we've seen earlier, the Microsoft Learn collections for Azure AI Engineer. Definitely you have to go through those, and those are, in my opinion, sufficient to pass the exam. You can actually take a practice assessment also as part of Microsoft Learn, and those are 50 questions. They are actually pretty close to the complexity that you will have during the exam. They are quite good training round. If you can pass those 50 questions training assessment, that's a good indicator that you can actually pass the exam. It's possible to actually have a fake exam, so to say. So just to familiarize yourself with the exam UI, depending on. So my exam was done with a Pearson view, I believe that's how they pronounced, and it's pretty straightforward. But it might be good to just click around and see how the exam looks like, so you don't have to fumble with finding buttons and so on. I recommend going through this video of John Saville. This is quite old video, but it's actually really nicely explaining all the AI concepts. This is kind of AI study cram. It's a 10 months old, but it's again very well explained. And if you want something on top of the Azure Learn, that's a good material in my opinion. Now, I didn't go for any Udemy courses or anything like that, but you can. I've heard a few that are good. You can just Google it. But again, I believe that using Microsoft Learn is sufficient to pass it. So something fun, and obviously not something that you can rely 100% on learning, but I actually used ChatGPT to help me generate some questions. I fed it with a few questions I found online and some that I came up with myself. And you can use this prompt or any other prompt to help you kind of get the best out of ChatGPT. I also created a custom GPT. You can click here on the link. And this custom GPT essentially does something very similar. It would ask you, how many questions do you want? How many questions at a time? And I tested it a few times. I used it to rehearse and learn, and it worked quite well. So definitely something you can play around with. Here a little bit more info about the exam itself. You can find all this information online. One last thing, you can choose at the start of the exam whether your questions should be in Python, in C#, if there are questions that are code related, and there were quite a few. Both options, I guess, are fine. Whatever you're more familiar with, I chose C#. But because you have the open book policy and you can use Azure Learn, this is something that is actually quite useful to be able to know those methods, whether it's Python or C#. So off the top of my head, the questions were actually pretty balanced. There were quite a few questions for, what service would you choose in given circumstances? So kind of like an architectural questions in nature. There were quite a few questions around specific REST endpoints or fill the blanks within code or a JSON payload for a service. So again, because you can use Microsoft Learn, this is a little bit easier. But some of the questions were really, really detailed. As usual with Microsoft certifications, there were some tricky questions as well. So the answers are similar or look similar. So you require a little bit of thinking. But overall, with an open book policy and going through Microsoft Learn, playing around a little bit in Azure Portal, this certification is definitely doable. So that's it for today. I wish you best of luck in learning, and I will leave the link to this documentation as well as other resources in the video description, and see you in the next video.